Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of Night Skies of Fort Collins. My name is Ben Gondres, and I'm the Dome Theater Manager at the Fort Collins Museum of Discovery, and it's my pleasure to bring this program to you on your devices every other week to tell you a little bit about what you can find in the night skies above Fort Collins so that you can go out and enjoy them for yourselves. Now, tonight's show is going to be a little bit different because tomorrow is Earth Day. Yay! And so to celebrate Earth Day, I thought I would tell you a little bit about our home in space, Earth, and what makes it so special and why we study it so much. Before we get started, though, I did want to mention that these programs are brought to you through your support. And so if you enjoyed tonight's program and would like to support us, we do ask that you consider making a donation to the museum. If you're watching on Facebook Live, that's very easy to do. You should see a little donate button right below the video here. Or you can visit our website after the program at fcmod.org/donate. And once again, these donations do help us continue to bring these programs to you in this time. So we really appreciate any support that you can offer. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and jump into our show for tonight. As I said, we are going to be talking about Earth, our home in space. And tonight we're going to explore our home planet Earth and how NASA helps to learn about it. Now, as this is a virtual show, obviously we're not going to be able to have quite as much interactivity as if you were here in the dome with me. However, I will be asking some questions throughout, which you can discuss with the people watching with you right now. And you can even respond to me directly by typing a comment or a question in the comments below the video. Now, there is a bit of a delay in the live stream, so if I don't get to your question right away, I will try to answer them as soon as I see them. So with that said, let's go ahead and start the show. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of NASA before. NASA, of course, stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the American people fund it to study and explore space. So, as a quick question to get us started, what do you think is the number one thing in the universe that NASA studies? Well, put another way, what do you want to study most in the whole universe? And why would you want to study that? What would you want to learn about that object? Go ahead and take a few seconds and share your ideas and reasons with the people watching the video with you right now. Excellent. Well, maybe you might have said Mars, perhaps the sun, maybe other galaxies, and certainly all of these places are important to NASA. But dollar for dollar, mission for mission, the number one studied object at NASA is, indeed, the Earth. Pat yourself on the back if you guessed correctly, and go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back if you learned something new. Now here is a quick snapshot of various NASA missions studying objects throughout the universe. Each of these little labels is a different mission in space. As you can see, the Earth is the single most studied object in the universe with more than 30 missions dedicated just to it. The Sun is a close second at about 20 different missions. And so, from this, which planet do you think is NASA's favorite? Well, it's the Earth, of course. Earth is our home in space. And I hope that it makes sense to you that we want to learn as much as we can. Now, as I said before, we're dedicating this show to learning just how special our home is and how important it is to study it in the context of space and the rest of the solar system. 50 years ago, on April 22nd, 1970, people around the world marked the first Earth Day. Thousands gathered to raise awareness about the importance of protecting our beautiful planet for future generations. And this year's Earth Day is about connections to our planet and to each other. Most of the connections we see around us are large and obvious, but we sometimes miss the little ones. During the pandemic, spending more time safely outdoors gave many of us an opportunity to explore new worlds in our own backyards. In that world within our world, we found a creature literally buzzing with activity, the honeybee. You guys have probably seen honeybees around. For the 10th year, NASA has created a special Earth Day poster, which you can see featured here. And for 2021, NASA featured these amazing creatures, these honeybees. Much like us, the honeybee is connected to our planet and as such is affected by the warming climate and changes to our Earth's systems. This important player in our planet's well-being has not gone unnoticed by NASA scientists. Several years ago, Wayne Esius, a research scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center and an amateur beekeeper, noticed that his bees were collecting pollen earlier in the spring than they had 15 years earlier. He was concerned because the pollination process relies on bees and flowers with nectar being ready for the pollination process at the same time. So he charted observations that he and other beekeepers gathered and looked at NASA's satellite data over the same period. Esius found that spring green-ups seen from space supported what the bees were telling them on the ground. The question was, were the bees seeing the same trends as the satellite sensors were seeing? And the answer was yes, they were spot on. Esius says, when we have more confirmation that nectar flows from bees, following the vegetation signals we see from satellites, we can better understand how our ecosystem might change. And so this is just one small way NASA is using data gathered from space to study our own Earth and learn more about it. This Earth Day, as we look at the global view of our intertwined systems from space, we also appreciate the important roles of even the smallest creatures in our connected planet. So let's start by looking at a view that you can only see from the Earth, at least without a bulky spacesuit on: the night sky. This is a screenshot of what the night sky might look like from Fort Collins. However, in our planetarium, we can turn off the city lights, sometimes called light pollution, to look at space a little better. Take a look around, and if you see something interesting, point it out to the person sitting next to you. I personally love getting out and exploring the night sky, and I encourage everyone to do the same, no matter where you are and how much or how little you can see of that night sky due to light pollution. As we mentioned, NASA is known for studying outer space. So why is NASA so invested in studying the Earth? Well, let's go ahead and take a rocket ship out to space to take a look for ourselves. Here we go. We are taking off from Fort Collins. And we can see the city lights glowing. Now take a moment to look for yourself and share some observations of the Earth, maybe some observations and some questions with those watching with you. Now, as we saw before, NASA has dozens of spacecraft missions studying the Earth today. And if I were to give you a small taste of what that looks like in space, it might look a little bit something like this. I've put a line everywhere there is a low Earth orbit satellite. These include NASA science satellites, but also include communication and navigation satellites that provide TV, phone signals, and GPS coordinates to people around the world. And these are just the ones closest to Earth that we can see. There are plenty more farther away. Note that you can actually explore NASA's Earth Science Fleet by visiting climate.nasa.gov/earth-now, and I'll go ahead and post that in the comments below. One of my favorite Earth science satellites is this one. Does anyone know which satellite this is? I bet you've heard of the International Space Station before. And this is it. The ISS celebrated its 20th anniversary last year. Now, the ISS is special out of all Earth satellites because it's the only one that has people on it. Did you know that it's also housed honeybees in the past? That's right. In 1984, NASA sent about 6,800 honeybees and a queen to the ISS aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger. The bees eventually adjusted to zero gravity and even produced honeycomb. Now, there are no more bees on the ISS now, but people have been living in space for more than 20 years, with astronauts rotating on and off the station every few months. The ISS is the world's orbiting laboratory, with cooperation from Russia, Japan, Europe, Canada, and many more, all working to study Earth and other sciences in microgravity. Before we move on, I'd like to point out my personal favorite room on the station, and it's this little bump right on the side here. I hope you can see my cursor there. And this is called the cupola, which is Italian for dome. And this is why it's my favorite room in the space station. This is a real 360-degree panoramic photo from the cupola. The cupola was installed in 2010 and is one of the only rooms on the station that has windows. You can imagine why you wouldn't want glass windows all over your space station. But it certainly has the best views. If you're feeling something profound, perhaps, from looking at our home from space, this feeling has a name. It's called the overview effect. I sincerely hope that you get a chance to see the real thing for yourself one day. Every astronaut has said that pictures simply don't do it justice. At any rate, it turns out that if you want to study the Earth as it really is, as a whole planet of interconnected systems, climates, ecologies, biologies, then the only place to do that is from space. Not only that, to see exactly how amazing, wonderful, and utterly unique our home is, you need to compare it to other planets. So that's what we're going to do today. So now we've flown out into space farther than any human has ever flown, and as we look back at our solar system and all of the planets, it may not look like the pictures in your textbook. First, can anyone find the sun? If you see the sun in this photo, go ahead and point it out. Yeah, you probably see that bright shining star right in the center of the picture here. Can you find the Earth? That one might be a little bit tougher. So let me go ahead and turn on some orbit lines so that you can see them a little better. Here we go. We can see Earth is this blue line here, the third planet from the sun. Now this is a picture of Earth from NASA's Voyager missions, taken in 1960 at about 6 billion kilometers away as Voyager 1 was leaving our solar system. Can you see Earth in this photo? Yeah, you're probably guessing that it's this little tiny dot right here. Now, as I said before, if we want to compare the Earth to other planets, do you think we should compare Earth to the gas giants? These large planets out here, Jupiter and Saturn? No, I think it would be much better to compare them to the 4 rocky or terrestrial planets that include the Earth. So we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. As I said, we're going to try our hands at a little bit of comparative planetology, which just means that we're going to take a look at different planets and see how they're similar and how they're different. There are so many ways to compare planets, but we only have time to examine a few features. So let's start with something basic, temperature. And if you're in Colorado right now, you probably know that we humans are very susceptible to temperature. We don't like it to get too cold or too hot. So Earth's temperature has to be just right. So let's see how the other planets compare. And to do this, we're going to use this simple graph. And we're going to put ranges of surface temperatures for each rocky planet on this graph. Note that these temperatures are in Celsius, and scientists like to use Celsius, so that's what we're going to use today. So for example, in this room right now, in the room that I'm in, it's about 20 to 25 degrees Celsius. How cold do you think it gets on Earth? How hot? I'll give you a hint, it does fit within this graph. Are you guys ready to see? Let's check it out. So just as a baseline, here is the temperature range from Earth. The coldest temperature, down here at the very bottom of this range, being somewhere in Antarctica at minus 93 degrees Celsius. And the hottest, up here, being somewhere in a California desert, probably Death Valley, at around 56 degrees Celsius. So knowing these numbers, let's move on to Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun. Well, Mercury is very close to the Sun, so how much hotter do you think Mercury is than Earth? Do you think it gets colder than Earth? Again, the high and the low will fit on this graph, so take a few seconds to share your guess with the person next to you. See if they agree or disagree. All right, here's Mercury's temperature range. Whoa, that's a huge range. Did you guess correctly? Are you as surprised as I am by the range of temperatures? Yeah, so Mercury gets boiling hot during the daytime, the side that faces the sun. But at night, the side that faces away from the sun is colder than Antarctica. You can see the coldest temperature that Mercury gets way down here, and the hottest temperature way, way up here. Mercury also rotates relatively slowly. It takes more than 58 Earth days. So the cooked side on the sunlit side can get nice and hot, and the cooling side can get nice and cold. So let's go ahead and skip over to Mars, the farthest of the 4 rocky planets from the sun. How much hotter or colder do you think Mars will be? Well, here's the range for Mars. You can see it's much more similar to the temperature range from Earth. Perhaps it doesn't get quite as hot, but it definitely gets colder than Earth sometimes. And last but not least, let's look at the temperature range for Venus. How much hotter do you think Venus gets? Do you think it gets colder than Earth at all? Let's see. Here is the temperature range for Venus. Whoa! Venus is very hot, as you can see here. And it doesn't get cold at all, it just stays hot. And this is due to the very, very thick atmosphere around Venus, trapping all of the heat from the sun. That's pretty crazy. So next, let's look at atmospheres. Go ahead and take a big, deep breath in right now. This is what you just put into your body. Looking at this graph, you can look at the color key to figure this out. What is the primary gas in Earth's atmosphere? Well, you can see that this orange area is the largest area, and that gas is nitrogen. What's the gas that you actually need to live? I bet you guys know this one. That's right, oxygen. We need oxygen in our air to breathe. Now, there are other gases in our atmosphere, mostly argon and water vapor, but there's also a tiny bit, but growing sliver of carbon dioxide. And you can see just a tiny sliver of this blue line right at the very top here. For Mercury, there's almost no atmosphere to speak of, so we'll go ahead and skip that planet. You can make some quick predictions as to what you think the atmosphere of Venus and Mars look like. But to save time, here they are. Here's Venus's atmosphere. As you can see, it's mostly made up of carbon dioxide, so no good for us to breathe. And here is the atmosphere of Mars, also largely made up of carbon dioxide. There is a tiny sliver of that yellow color, which is oxygen here, but still probably not breathable for humans. So these charts show you what the atmospheres are composed of. However, I do want to make it clear that each of these planets have different total amounts. For example, if Earth has this much air, for example, this is how much air you take in with each breath, then Mercury would have practically no air whatsoever. And Mars has less than 1% of the atmosphere of Earth. It's a very, very thin atmosphere. Venus would have this much atmosphere, as you can see, almost 100 times that of Earth. Take a few seconds and share some observations about atmospheres with the people with you. Now, there's much more to figure out about the connection between temperature and atmosphere, and I hope you'll think about it long after this show. But the idea here is simply to show you how special our home, our planet Earth, is. Among all the planets in the solar system, and indeed in the whole known universe so far, it is the only planet that we know of that could possibly be our home. And so that's why every Earth Day we celebrate Earth and we celebrate ways that we can take care of our home in space. Of course, while Earth is our one and only home, and while Earth is NASA's favorite planet of all, as I said before, we would still like to visit other planets. And in fact, we do that quite often. Now, we only have time for a quick visit to one planet for now, but let's go ahead and fly to the planet Mars. Now, you may have heard recently about a mission that was sent to Mars, the Perseverance rover. This is a very exciting mission because not only will it be taking samples of Mars soil, but it will be storing those samples in a cache for a future mission to go and pick up from the surface of Mars and actually bring back to Earth. This is groundbreaking, as we've never been able to bring samples of Mars back to Earth to study them here in laboratories here on Earth. Now, as we rotate and orbit around Mars, go ahead and share some observations that you might have about what you are seeing currently. Perhaps as we're looking at the dark side, you're seeing a thin band of that atmosphere. As I said, Mars does have an atmosphere. It's just much, much thinner than Earth's. Perhaps at the very top of Mars there, you can see one of its polar ice caps. And this is where we believe there is actually water ice stored in these ice caps. As we rotate around to the daylit side, maybe you see some darker areas of Mars, some lighter areas, some impact craters from objects flying from space and impacting the surface. Maybe even some canyons or some mountains. Up at the very top, you see a circular area, and that is actually Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. And just coming up to the right here is Valles Marineris, the biggest canyon in the solar system. All right. So let's go ahead and take a quick trip down to the surface of Mars with our good friend, the rover Curiosity. As I said, we did just send a new rover, Perseverance, which landed in February, but Curiosity, it's just my favorite rover, so I like to keep talking about it. Now, Curiosity was built by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, and NASA has sent a number of robots to visit Mars. Everything from flybys to orbiters to landers like Curiosity and Perseverance, to full rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance, excuse me. As I said, this is Curiosity, and one of the many reasons why it's my favorite is that it included a selfie camera. And so this is actually a real selfie taken from the surface of Mars. Now, Curiosity was the first rover to have a drill, and so it was able to drill below the surface of Mars. And as we can see, the red planet is only red on the very surface. What color would you say Mars soil actually is? Also, have you ever tried the panorama mode on your cell phone camera? Well, NASA scientists can do that on Mars too now. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Now, this is the closest that I can get you to actually being on the surface of Mars. But this is pretty amazing to see. The terrain here, and yeah, it's looks very similar perhaps to some locations here on Earth. Some very dry and desolate locations, perhaps. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that quick visit to the surface of Mars with our good friend Curiosity. Now, comparing Earth to other planets is a really good start in realizing just how wonderful our home really is. Here I've scaled each of the rocky planets to about the correct scale. So looking at this, which planet is the smallest? Looks like Mercury, perhaps. Which planet is the largest? It's really important to remember that our home is the Earth, but it's also the solar system where we live. And NASA is helping to explore and study this collective place humans call home. There's so much more that we could dive into, and I hope that you join us for future programs where we will do that, but sadly for today our time is just about up. However, I hope that this has given you just a bit more appreciation for our home and how important it is to take care of the one place in the universe that we can live, because there's truly no place like home. Well, we've gone on quite a journey, but let's get you back to Earth here. I just want to remind you all that all of the images that you saw today and the information that we talked about is available freely online. Solarsystem.nasa.gov is a really great place to start, and I'll go ahead and paste the link to that in the comments for you to check out. But there's also nasa.gov/Earth Day 2021, where you can learn all about Earth Day and get some amazing resources related to that. I'd like to leave you with this final image, and this is a special image of Earth named the Blue Marble. It's special because it was one of the very first pictures of Earth ever taken by the Apollo missions, where NASA sent humans to the moon 50 years ago. Before the Apollo missions, humans really hadn't seen our home as a whole planet. And it's no coincidence that after the first Apollo images of the whole Earth came back and people did really see our home for the first time, the first Earth Day was officially started, as I said before, in 1970. So I'd like to leave you with a very happy Earth Day. Well, that brings us to the end of our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit about what makes our home in space so special. And I hope you'll join us again for future programs. We do have Discovery Live, where we bring on experts and scientists, and you get to ask them your burning science questions, as well as Future Night Skies, where I'll show you a little bit about what you can find in the night sky. And once again, if you enjoyed tonight's program, we do require your support to continue to make these possible. So if you are able to, we ask that you consider making a donation to the museum. You can visit fcmod.org/donate, or if you're on Facebook Live, just click the little donate button down below to do that today so that we can continue to bring these types of programs to you. Thank you once again for joining me here tonight, and I hope to see you again in the future. Have a great night, everyone, and keep looking up.